Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God Almighty, the most gracious, the most merciful. Dearest beloved divine friends, family, brothers and sisters, today is a very great and a mighty day in honor of Emancipation. Emancipation Day, unfortunately, has become a time for having a good time, basically celebrate. That is good. It's good for people to be able to have a good time. But it is more important, friends and families, ladies and gentlemen, more important to reflect, to meditate, to go into an emotional reality and fact as to what our ancestors, the African ancestors, went through from the time they were captured in their homeland, which was the mighty nation and continent of Africa, in moments of warfare, capturing each other and then selling each other to the Arabs, whoever might have been interested at that time. But then came the Europeans with a vast network in their own European countries, inclusive of England, and in North America, Canada, and the United States, South America, the Caribbean, West Indies, and so on. It is a painful thing to all of us and to all righteous thinking persons about the travails and the pains and the torments that the Africans who were kidnapped from their lands in Africa and brought into a new world and sold into slavery under totally painful, inhuman conditions and sold as if they were a commodity. Then they became property. Many of them in history would say, this is my, if you read history, this is my property. Human beings made property out of the greed of fellow humans to enrich themselves. Many cases, men and women to be raped by them for their joys, even though they scorn them. I would call these great peoples slaves in a most derogatory manner. They would still want, even though they consider them to be less than humans, God forbid, they would want to sodomite the males and they would want to rape the women. This is one of the travails of slavery in history that I cannot comprehend. Today is the day of emancipation. It is Thursday, August 1st, 2024, and a time of joy, a time to be happy, but a time also to pray for the ancestors who laid the bones on this shore. These African ancestors who laid the bones on the shores of this country and all the countries in the British Commonwealth. I have not done the research to see whether emancipation came in totality amongst all Europeans. But in this case, I am staring into the reality of the British. When it dawned on them that what they were doing was wrong. But before I go further, I must let you know I'm doing this recording today. I felt compassionate and empowered to do this when I woke up this morning, for today is a day one of the greatest days in the history of this country. And with me is, you all know, Zaid Abdullah, my boy, my young prince. He's growing, he's doing very well, he's learning. And I thought I'd bring him in to sit with me so he gets some of this knowledge. I told him this morning that I'm his primary school, his high school, his technical school, his college, his vocational school, and his protector. Because he needs to get all of this knowledge ingrained into him. I think one day he might be doing these things. So I just wanted you to remember Zaid Abdullah with me. I just wanted for him to get some of this knowledge. So just coming back to the reality, that in those days, when in the United States in particular, when the persons who were slaves, I hate that word. I don't know what better word to use. Individual, but maybe I have to use it to bring out that reality of the fact. Because my mind is telling me that I don't like that word. I should probably say people's in subjection. But sounds so nice, you know. These people were enslaved under the most brutal method created by men. And while they were working, they would invent certain implements and certain things, by which time America developed and they started to patent. And those times, when they would make these various inventions, they would steal those inventions because they were the property of the owner of the slave. And they would take credit for the invention. But that didn't only happen then. It happened after the abolition of slavery, and they were making fantastic inventions in medicine and in electronics. For example, many people don't know, they invented the stoplight. But I'm going to give you a few things that they invented for you to understand the fork that you eat with. Many other things. I'm going to give you a few of that before I close this program. It's impossible to deal on this topic in a few minutes, friends and families, brothers, sisters, ladies and gentlemen. So today, I feel great anguish in my heart, but I am very indebted. We all in Guyana, whether we live in Guyana or as a diaspora, all of America, all of England, the whole of Europe, all the European nations, they're all indebted to the Africans. For they brought out tens upon tens upon tens of thousands of shiploads of human cargo in the most filthy conditions in order to enrich themselves. And so the wealth that they have and the surpluses that they have, one of the worst countries was Spain. But then they all were bad. And all that they have is because of the blood and sweat of the African people that they traded in and that worked for them free for hundreds of years. Now, I want to touch on a point, ladies and gentlemen, that emancipation, they say we gave them freedom, emancipation. Oh, really? When the British gave emancipation, and a date was announced. I mean, this is the heart, and the people were excited about it. That finally, after many decades of rebellion and fighting on one occasion, on several occasions, they came together. They had techniques of sending the messages to different estates, and they rebelled non-violently. But the British were so cruel to them that they used the most vehement and passionate type of violence against them. to inflict that fear into them. For the hundreds of years they've been telling them you're not human, that you don't have a soul. Do you have a soul? Oh no, Master Sir. Oh no, Master Sir. I don't have a soul. No, sir. No, no, no. But their body was good to be molested, and their labor, their sweat was good to be stolen. And when they would put certain things around their neck like this, with a bell at the end. So if they try to escape, a bell will ring. Some slaves went through that. Some were castrated in history, so that they could leave the slaves with their wives, because in many cases it is known that the wives of the slavers had submitted to the slaves. That's why we got what is called the mulatto and the mixed races in these countries. I was touching on a point on their inventions. So I want to give you some, because the time is going very fast. Emotionality is here. I want to first of all say that we, the Indians, the Portuguese, the Chinese, we all owe a debt of gratitude to the Africans. You understand me, sir? That's why I want you to sit here, the Lord. We owe them a knowledge. We owe them great thank you and appreciation, because when we came here, we had roads upon which we could walk. We had a wharf on which we could have landed. They were our first midwives, and they still are, delivering our babies. Anybody is in the country as midwives, or whether as doctors in the hospital, or caring us, it is always the Africans. I recall my mother getting baby at 2 o'clock in the morning. I had to leave Corriverton or Skeldon to go all the way to 64 Village to find the nurse and the cleaner who will come and take care of her, always Africans. The greatest and the best of teachers were Africans, so they taught us English. They taught us everything we need to understand the white man. And I'm not saying this in a derogatory manner. Let us say the slavers. The slavers. And the slavers were of a particular ethnicity. Some of them were kind. Some of them gave Christian names to their slaves and tried to teach them Christian ways and principles, but they can't read. Because if you could only read, they kill you. Or else you would be dangerous. And you will study the Bible and you will see in the Bible. That's why there were some manipulations, it is believed, in the Bible in which slaves must submit themselves to their master. Regardless of what they do to you, you can't rebel, you must submit. But there are also sections which prove that people have a right to fight for their growth and their freedom and their development. At this juncture, I want to take maybe 3 to 5 minutes to give you some inventions of the African peoples in the archaeus gynae media for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, and today is dedicated to the peoples of African descent, to my teachers who were Africans, to my kindergarten teacher, to the nurses that delivered me and delivered all of my relatives and so on in this country. We all owe them, and we all must applaud them and respect them. Some people will say, oh, many are criminals. Well, don't we have criminals amongst the Indo-Guyanese? Don't we have criminals amongst some mixed races or amongst the indigenous? Criminality is an international problem. Let me give you some idea of some inventions, great inventions by peoples of African descent and how they have changed lives. But what has happened? They just end up stealing or buying out the patent for cheap because they're smart. And there was a woman, they used to have it in the box, the pancake and the pancake syrup, Aunt Jemima. And then they became so famous. Aunt Jemima invented in slavery, in chains, her pancake mix. In chains, always kept in chains. something like pancake and syrup for the joy of the bloodsuckers, the slavers. So what happened? It went on, registered, marketed, ladies and gentlemen, for decades, and now they suddenly decided to change the name because it was bringing out the reality of African creativity and how they did it. I was a black woman on Jemima. So what they did, they took off that name now from that box and from that pancake syrup. Goes to show you the conspiracy is still there. We know also, let me hold a minute. In certain countries in the United States of America, I'm sad to say, they're interfering with history. Particularly the governor of Florida. They want to change it to show that slavery was good to the Africans because they learned some trade. Hello, anybody you take from anywhere and they have to do something and they get a bit exposure under the whip or under the machete or under the rope hanging on the neck, they will learn and they will serve you. But that does not take away from the bestiality, those who don't understand the animalistic behavior of the slavers. Don't change history, man. History was already written by the victors who are the slavers. So why you want to now, in this time, change history? A minute, please, ladies and gentlemen.
You just want